Good morning again. Um, I'm here to talk about something that part of me is kind of finished talking about. You know. I've been asked by the Soto Zen Buddhist Association um, along with Brooklyn Zen Center, to talk about women and monasticism and my experience in monasticism um, in the monastic community of women. I say I'm finished talking about it because there's only so much talk you can do. But even in the past few weeks, thinking about this talk, doing the readings, um, reacquainting myself with that experience, because at this point, it's more than a decade ago that I had that experience. I'm talking about something that happened way back in 2012. And I am a very different person than I was in 2012. Um, I've had other experiences that now have, thrown another color of thread into that fabric that has been um, this life of practice for me. So I'm not saying that I'm through talking about it because I'm tired of it. You might be tired of me, but just the realization um, that we are always continuously practicing with our experience. These things grow within us. These things um, are part of the forming of us, but it's not the whole of us, because it's like clay. I don't know where I'm going with this, but it just comes to my mind. I was watching a lot of people clay making. For some reason, that's my ASMR, watching the people form things out of clay. And you take a piece of clay and you smash it together. And then you take this other piece of clay that maybe came from someplace else, and it changes the whole texture of the material that you're working with. We are that clay. Our lives, our bodies, our practice are that clay, always forming. And I'm not finished yet. So that's kind of what I mean. But I'm going to talk about it to you today. Just for a little background, and hopefully I won't go crazy and keep blabbing, but in 2012, I did an ango at the Aichi Senmon Nisoto, which is a Soto Zen convent in Nagoya under Shundo Aiyama Roshi, who some of you may know. If you've read Paula Arai's book on women in Zen, women living Zen, that's the organization or the temple that she's talking about. And I had the great privilege of speaking with Professor Arai, thanks to Yuko-san, who made that happen. A very nice, very important sort of kick for me in this practice I'm doing now. And I'm not going to go into that. An ango, for those of you who might be new to this, is a 3-month practice period. And you're basically cloistered and you're doing monk's work. I don't know how else to say it. I have a quote here from Sugen Narasaki Roshi, from a little book that he did called Zen Practices and the Zen Monastic Practices. I think that's the name of the book. Had it for a long time. It's a little book that just tells you how to get dressed, where you're supposed to stand, that kind of thing. Yeah. How to use your bowls, those things. Very practical little book. He says, since ancient times, the Zen dojo or Zendo or Soto, however you like to call it, has been called the soren, which in Japanese means thicket. This is because the practice of the monks is like trees and grass growing together in peace and harmony. In the Soto, newcomers and seniors, young and old monks help each other to improve as they live together, doing zazen, listening to lectures, and working with ongoing effort. In this way, they can be likened to milk smoothly blending with water. They never neglect practice. This attitude exemplifies the essence of the way of life at a temple. In the thicket with your friends and frenemies, with people you know and people who are total strangers. When I went in 2012 to the Nisoto, it turned out to be one of the most difficult, most challenging periods in my life. As usual, I'm walking into it totally blind, totally ignorant, naive, all of those things. At 49, believe it or not, still, you know. I'd been practicing with my teacher for, at that point, over 20, nearly 20 years. I don't know, that's getting on 30 now, but it was nearly 20 years at least, 15, 20 years. I had already gone to 2 other angos, which I thought were just like the most terrible crucibles in the world. And this, and found out, I'm like, oh, yeah, that was easy. They were being nice. I don't like to put the Nisana down because I don't think, it's not because I don't think they weren't nice. What it was is they were dead serious. They were absolutely serious about what they were doing in those buildings. And when I walked into it, I realized how much of a how it's just sliding along, kind of. I went to this, that, and I did the rituals and all of that, but I didn't realize how little sweat and effort I had really put into it, into Zen practice, into Zen life, which I'm going to explain in a minute. Because it was still for me a thing that I put on and took off. In our conversation, Yuko and I's conversation with Paula, the thing that she said, and I should have heard this so long, I heard this, but I didn't hear it because her book is called Women Living Zen. And I'm talking about, oh, I really want to, engage with women and talk about their practice and know about their practice and talk about their practice and how do they practice and blah, 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 because practice is a word that floats around here, and I use it a lot. And what Professor Rai said to us was, you know, if you ask these women about their practice, they are not going to know what you're talking about. Practice? What's that? Because they're not, they're dead serious. This is not practice. This is their lives. This is not just their way of living. This is the life that wells up within, the life that's forming, that's moving in the world, that the energy. And it's not a thing to call practice, because if you think about it, practice is actually doing. And I've said this before, and I have to hear myself say it, you know, again, myself. Practice is the doing. Call it practice because it makes it easier for me to say, oh, I'm just doing my practice and sometimes I'm good at it. And no, your practice is your life. This is you living, Chimyo. And are you truly living with the paramitas and the sutra, and what the sutras are trying to explain to us? And what my favorite, lovingly, I could lovingly call him that little brat, Dogen, that brilliant brat, Dogen, who gets on your nerves and presses every single button. Really, this is life. And I can call it practice and stick it over here in this box brain of mine and take it seriously when I want to take it seriously. When I got to the Nisoto, it was August. It was hot. At that time, I owned one Kuromo. I happen to be wearing it right now. I've been wearing this Kuromo for 18 years. I'm not going to show you all the patches, but this is a winter weight Kuromo. Or some people say there's an even heavier weight kimono than this, but there's only one step more. This is a winter weight Kuromo, and I showed up with it in August. And it's the only one I had, and I had to wear it the whole time. And I showed up ill-prepared, poorly dressed. I showed up, had my head shaved and everything like I was supposed to and everything. And I showed up with my quote unquote no expectations full of expectations. You know, oh, I'm just gonna walk up in here and, you know, everybody's gonna be friendly, whatever. And I walked in and a friend of mine, you know, a Japanese friend of my teacher dropped me off at the door. And she dropped me off at the door and, you know, and she's talking, you know, to them because I don't speak Japanese. Really bad, really bad situation that basically makes you deaf mute almost. Not in that, and I don't mean that in a way contrary, but really, I hear nothing and I can say nothing. Puts you right in that spot, you know. And if any of you, you know, have ever been in that kind of situation or have a disability of that kind, you know, I'm not comparing it to that, but I hear you now. I know what you mean. Because she dropped me at the door. They did not let her come in, even though she herself was a nun, a teacher, and head of a temple. They did not let her come in because they were serious. Are you here? What are you here for? Oh, you just dropping her off? Bye. And suddenly I'm standing in this foyer all by myself, and I don't know what's going on. They showed me to a room, put my stuff down, and they walked away. And somebody came later to tell me, okay, this is what you do, this, and this, because they don't have time. You know, we walked in the middle of their day. They're busy, they're doing their stuff. It wasn't even time for Ango yet, it was before the Ango. And there I was. I wish I could say I was smart enough to be scared. I wish I could say I was smart enough to know how much trouble I was in. I wish I could say that I wasn't the big baby that totally expected somebody to come and take care of me from the get-go. It's called privilege. That's called self. That's called why am I the most valuable thing in this building suddenly? In this building I've never been in, with these people who don't know me and don't necessarily have to care about me. Fast forward maybe a couple of days and maybe a week or so, I think, and we had our entering ceremony. And I'm standing again in that doorwell. In the entering ceremony, you have to wear your I'm forgetting the name of the hat, the big straw hat. You have to have your box on your chest and your traveling clothes on. And walked in and took all of that off. And there's one of the teachers came out and she said to the other entries, there were two others. One was Japanese and one was German, but spoke Japanese. And she said to them in Japanese something that I didn't understand. And she got to me and she suddenly spoke English. She said, "Can you do this?" Okay, no voice. "Can you do this?" And somebody said, "Yes, say yes." "Yes, I can." No. "Can you do this?" Yes, 3 times. "Yes, I can." "What?" "Yes, I can." "Can you do this?" She looked like the meanest lady. "Yes, I can. Yes, I can." Scream it. "Yes, I can." I had to tell myself, scream it. And she said, "Mm-hmm." And she walked away. How small do you get? Can you do this? Can you really? The next few days, there was, confusion. They had a different way of doing things that I knew from the angos that I had participated in before and from the way my teacher did things. And, everything seemed wrong. Oh, why are they doing it? Like, no, it's like, and all kinds of criticism come up in my mind. They don't know what they're doing, don't they? But I do. Standing in that, foyer that well. Do you? Can you? There was this kind of asceticism to the Nisoto that I had never experienced before. The previous Angos, they put us in these lovely historic temples, up on a mountain with, special artworks and things like that, in the corridors. And, in one temple, they didn't want us to mess up the sliding doors, so they actually took them off. They said, no, these are too valuable to be hanging around some Western people. Y'all might throw each other through the doors. They took the doors down. Thought that was pretty funny. But, and, lovely baths, okay food, that kind of thing. We had to sleep on the floor, but there was plenty of room, and little heaters everywhere in the wintertime. And a few people got some chilblains. They weren't that comfortable. But compared, the Nisoto is in the city. The Nisoto is in the middle of Nagoya. It's like things in Japan. Somehow you you cross the threshold of the temple gate, and the sound just kind of falls away. The sound of the city falls away. And it was kind of like that. But it's also an old school building. In the middle of it, down straight through when you walk into the gate, right in front of you, at the end of the path, is an old concrete school building. On one side, there's a Soto, or the meditation hall, and that's built in a traditional way. And on the other side, there's the Hato, which is also built in a traditional way. And there's a tea house back there and all that. But the core of it is this concrete, maybe 30s, 40s school building. Kind of ugly. Completely matter of fact. And that's the Kuin, that's the place where we lived and where the kitchens are and things like that. And so in this building, which, at the time, I'm not saying it does right now, had problems with mold and things like that. You look in the corners and there's mold or whatever. Not the romantic thing at all. Not the romantic picture that you have of going into the temple Ango. But that's what it was. And that's what they had. This is the largest women's convent that exists, the only one that exists right now. And as many books as Ayama Roshi has written, as much play that she gets out in the media and in Europe, I don't know so much about here. I know we know her here, or we're starting to know her here. Her temple, compared to the Ehe, Jiso, Jiji's, DG, GD's, this GG and that GG, her Soboji is kind of poor. There were 35 women that year. I was one of 35. And the rooms in there are really small, tatami rooms. They have desks in there for everyone that's there, or nearly everyone. Sometimes you have to share. We get these futons to sleep on that, I was sick of that thing right there. You get one to sleep on there. And you get a little hard, what do you call that stuff in it? The grains. They put them in, why am I losing it now? Buckwheat, yes, thank you. Little buckwheat pillow, about that big, hard as a rock. And you get a futon cover. You get a duvet. And you might have, if you were prepared, you'd have had a blanket with you in your suitcase instead of all that other junk that I bought. And that's what you get to sleep on. You can ask, and there were some older women there. I was not the oldest woman there. There were women there who were in their 70s. I think the ages ranged from 16 to like 70s. I remember she was in her 70s at that time, I think. And that's what they got to sleep on. Very ascetic to me. You know. But later on, there were nights when you just, well, first of all, you learn to take that little hard pillow and wrap it up in your futon and make it comfortable. But later on, you might not have had the pillow at all because all you did was climb onto that futon and pass out and wait for the bell, until the bell rang for the next morning because it didn't matter. The body finds its way. Somebody said that to me when I was feeling ill and sick at the Soto. They said the body finds its way, and I did not know what she meant. I thought she said, "Oh, she doesn't speak English that well. She's choosing a word, for that maybe doesn't mean exactly." Oh yeah, the body and mind and the heart finds its way, even in the most ascetic circumstances. I'm not wanting to use that word, but we were 8 women in a room. First couple of nights, we figured out, it was like a jigsaw puzzle, how to set the um, futons up so that we could all fit and not be overlapping each other. Tell everybody, for the first few months, I slept with my feet in the closet because that's how far, we had to go in. And I was so strongly rebelling against that. There were some women there, a couple of women one was from Venezuela and one was from France, who spoke a little English, and I would complain to them. I'd say, "Why do we have to do this? Life is hard enough already. Why do we have to pretend hard?" Some of the dumbest crap I've ever said, in my life. But I'm not going to go into all kinds of details about that. Put it this way: that's kind of kind of how it was. But it was also a fact that, as I said, was not a rich temple, as famous as Yamaroshi, as Zen famous as Yamaroshi is. This is not a temple that had a lot. It's not the romantic vision of it. Most of the food that we received was donated. We would go every few days, in this corridor, right off the kitchen, or right off the hato in the kitchen, between them actually. People would come, some from the countryside, and bring, food. They would bring vegetables and things like that. Some of it was stuff, that you could tell was surplus, and they were getting rid of it. And some of it was, not that that is a bad thing. Come on, but it was given, to us, and we had to eat it. We had to eat it. There was no running to town and going and getting stuff if there were things that had been donated to us. I remember a vision in my memory of boxes of apples stacked higher than I was. We had to eat all those apples. And we ate apples every day for a long time. And persimmons, and this big melon called the togan. that they put in soup. It has no flavor. But it's the worst thing to clean and to cook. You have to get all the seeds out because it's like a giant cucumber with bunches of seeds, and you had to get the seeds out, and we weren't allowed to. I was in the tens over, we weren't allowed to um, discard any of the flesh. Whatever little flesh you could get, even from between those seeds, we used every bit of it. We got some chestnuts, and every single one of them had a little um, bug in it. Not a bug, what do you call it? Larva in it. And you cut it around, and chestnut maybe about that big. By the time you finish cutting around it, might have been that big, but you're going to use that little piece. Dead serious about what we're doing here. And that was the training. Like I said, didn't know how serious it could get. And it was hard. It was hard because here's another thing they kept saying to me: we are going to break your ego. And it sounded like a threat. You're going to break you. I'm going to break your ego. And it sounds that way to, this kind of person who is ignorant and only half understanding and unable to even ask the question, to verbally ask the question. I say that because verbally asking a question, but you still ask the question. And I'm not sure what I mean by that, but bear with me. Looking outside, looking for the answer. A lot of what living Zen is not learning Zen. It's not. Um, it's not. How do I put this? Because I never did find a word for it. This is where my notes break up. It's not about absorbing something, because what are you absorbing if you're part of all of it, right? No self, all that, you know. Are you listening? Are you digging deep? Are you asking, questioning all the time? Not doubt exactly, but questioning. What is this moment? How am I responding in this moment? Am I living this moment? Or am I just practicing? Tangent. But they were always saying they were going to break this ego. And I think back then, and in subsequent years, I've kind of said, breaking the ego. Okay, yeah, get rid of that hard-headedness, that, self-centeredness, all of that stuff that, we build up as identity and out of our fears and anger and ignorance. But really, what's breaking? I think, and this is an opinion, it's not a popular opinion in this world, but it's my opinion. I think monastic practice is really important for those of us who want to or have the aspiration to help others along the path. I think it's very important because it's very hard as a layperson or as a person in the world to truly focus on living the Dharma. We are all living the Dharma. That's true. But it's hard when you're, when I used to be a case manager at social services, when you're sitting at a desk and there are choices to be made that have worldly consequences to them. You know, you have this application for somebody and you need to finish it. You need to get it off your desk. And there's always this risk of forgetting that attached to that piece of paper, attached to that thing you got to get off your desk, is a life, is a human being with a child, is a world of hurt. And people who deserve more than beings who deserve more than just being shoved to another pile on the desk. Hard to do that. It's hard to let go of goals when you're in sales and you got to make your numbers. You know, really hard. It makes it, and it's not a judgment or anything. It's simply hard. In the monastery, you know, you're there with people who have the same aspiration as you do. So there's no competition, or there shouldn't be. I'm not saying there's no competition. We are human beings. There's no need for the competition. You know, there's a hierarchy in the monastery, and you're just where you are. Doesn't matter. You know, you can't, you know, be promoted. You can pretend it's a promotion, but it's really not. It's just where you are in that time. You know, whether you're the Tenzo or the Fukuro or the Ino. I mean, none of those things mean anything because anybody can do that job. But the focus of life in the monastery takes away all that pressure to do, to gain, because in the monastery there's nothing to gain. I'm going on a bit, and I hope I don't confuse people if I skip over something, but part of that nothing to gain was what I saw that was very different from the two angles I did previously in and all three of these were in Japan. The two angles I had done previously, and some of the experiences that I had in Sangha in the United States and with these women. In Japan, it's usually the son or a male who takes over a temple in Japan. It's changing. Slowly but surely, it's changing. But most Soto Zen temples are run by men. And whether they're inherited or not, are, you know, turned over to men to run and take care of. So the women who come to the Nisoto, I remember I said some of these, they range from ages 16 to, you know, 70. go to the Nisoto without this expectation that they're going to be the big Roshi, or they're going to run the big temple, or even the little temple. Why did they come? Well, why were they there? There's nothing to gain except a busted ego and some bad food and what? And this is part of our idea of Zen. You know, there's nothing to gain here. Enlightenment, what's that? You know, what do you get for that? What's the prize? There's no prize. There's no better than. There's no position. So why did these little 16-year-old, believe it or not, I'm a little uncomfortable in this robe. I'm trying not to grab that again. I'm sorry. Why was she there? She could have been hanging in Harajuku with her friends, but she was dead serious. She got up every day and she worked hard. The day in the Nisoto is you wake up at 3 or 4, whatever, depending on what time of year it is, and you get up. You know, Charlie knows what I'm talking about. You get up, and the day just begins. It begins with zazen, and these were hour-long zazen. You know, not half an hour, not no 40 minutes. This hour. In a Soto, and you didn't get these nice little, Zabutons, It was that hard little zafu sat straight on top of that tatami tan, hard as a rock. I learned to take, because I can't do full lotus. I can't even do half lotus anymore. And I learned to take a towel and put it under my ankle because my ankle was turning, it was getting a callus on it, sitting so hard on that, all my weight on that ankle. But that's the way they sat. That's the traditional way to sit. And they didn't have, money for special cushions. How cute. Dead serious. And in their seriousness, as I started to learn, because I only just really started, I was only there for 5 months. Not long enough. Not long enough for me. Might have been long enough for some of y'all. Y'all might be, y'all probably might get it quicker than I did. But when I walked out of there, I said, I haven't been in there long enough. What happened for me was this understanding of what they were trying to teach me. That busted ego didn't mean they wanted to crush me or what I think of as me. They wanted to free me. They want to free me from these ideas and crazy notions and expectations that I have so I could see and be truly there in that moment and know that moment and know when I'm lighting the candle, all I'm doing is lighting the candle, but I'm doing everything else too. And that my whole life in that moment is directed to making that flame and nourishing that flame, taking care. All the parameters are there, you know. When we're sleeping on the floor in this tiny, tiny room, I wrote about this some time ago. and I have to get up and go to the bathroom, and I'm all the way in the inside of, in the room. There's all these bodies laying around me in the dark, and you learn. And I can remember she told me how to do it. Slip your foot so that you can touch the tatami of the floor, and shuffle slowly. And in that darkness, in that no rush to get to the bathroom, no way, to feel your foot touch someone's hip or an arm drawn over. Touch it and move carefully so as not to hurt. Nothing, even with pee running down your leg, is worth hurting, disturbing that tender flesh right there that you just touched. Hard to feel that when you're dealing with a piece of paper on your desk with somebody's name on it. This arm has no name. I don't even know necessarily who it is, but I touched it. I feel it. Remember, that's how much easier it is to not do, to do. Well, wait a minute. How's the precept go? To not do harm in the world, to do only good. Very hard when we're living in the abstract and relative. Not so hard when you're living right next to the flesh. When you're so close to somebody in the night, no privacy at all, of course, that you can feel their breath on your cheek or on your forehead. You can hear them sigh in the night, the way you hear your children sigh in the night, if you're a layperson. We get that opportunity with our children. We don't often get that opportunity with each other. Every job that you do in the monastery is meant to care for somebody. Yeah, you're caring for yourself too. But you're cutting that potato and you're cutting that rotten piece out of that potato, and you're doing your best to save as much of it as you can so that everybody, all 35 of us, can eat and go to bed with something maybe not tasty, but full on our bellies. Great gratitude, knowing gratitude of seeing those lovely boxes of apples towering in that hall, and knowing that somebody drove all the way out from the countryside and stacked those there for us, and they don't even know my name. They don't know me at all. True generosity, true dana. Do I give that way when I'm not in a monastery? Am I living that way? Really? And every part, of that. And it doesn't mean that everything in the monastery is smooth and harmonious. The thicket is full of brambles and tangles, and we're tripping all over each other. And there's a root picking up here that spreads the ground. But still, even in those circumstances. Hmm. Okay. I'm going to try to close here because I want to give y'all time to talk, because I talk too much. But it's wonderful to sit and study and talk about the paramitas and the Eightfold Path. Sanshin, those are my favorite things because they're all the same thing. you know, just, and they're all expressed in these wonderful, beautiful ways. It's really hard to live them. And this is what those women, can you do this? What do you ask me? What can I do? Of course I can walk in this door and I can put on my robes correctly and I can do all the, can you, what is you asking me? What can I do? Can I live this? Can I really be this? Is my heart really open? Or is it closed up in this ego thing you're trying to break? And just so I want to let you understand that these are not terrible, horrible people that I spent time with those 5 months. Not at all. They exhibited so much kindness in their tough way, you know. The lady, um, mm, hold on, let me get to one more thing. The other things that I experienced that I won't go into now, but I experienced standing in line, waiting to go onto the into the Ryoban. And the first time I saw it, each woman standing in line, waiting to go to their place, helping each other fix their robes. There's a certain fold that you have to have with your robes. And, it's hard to do because there are mirrors in there. You're not looking in the mirror, fixing your clothes. You're learning to put it on by feel. I'm losing the feeling in my fingers. I'm get numb fingers and all that going on now that I'm older. Um, but sometimes you don't get it right, and your sister is there to help you fix it. And you see a row of women, each one fixing the one in front of them's robe so that it sits right. The first time I felt somebody do that for me, I almost burst into tears. For someone to even notice, as different as I looked from them, the fact that I didn't speak their language, that half the time they had to yell at me to get me to do something because I didn't understand. And I walked in there stupid and ignorant and not even knowing how to say hello or pronounce thank you properly. And still, she touched and fixed it like I belong there. That doesn't always happen here in the United States. We know that. The other was when a young woman who had been having some difficulties in the that not everybody, she had some psychological issues, um, and was having a really difficult time in the at the Nisoto. And like I said, it's not all smooth, it's not all cake. For some reason that I don't understand, and I don't have to understand it. She came, sometimes she would talk to me, she could speak a little English, better English than some there. a little more confident in it maybe. And she'd come and speak to me every once in a while. She came and she was crying and she'd had a hard morning. And she came and she sat next to me. And you're only supposed to sit in the space where you're supposed to sit because it's all a hierarchy. She came and she sat down next to me and grabbed my hand. And we sat there through the whole tea time, holding her hand while she cried. She chose me. And so I sat there and I held her hand. A privilege. And there was no thinking about, why is she doing this? What am I supposed to do? All I had to do was sit there and hold her hand. Can we do that here in the relative real, quote unquote, real world? Can't we? And just times of joy where all of a sudden something is funny. I don't understand the joke, but they're laughing and they're passing around little pieces of cake or the last crumbs, the broken in the bottom of the cookie box, just passing it around. Joy. I know probably doesn't make a bit of sense to any of you. This is just my experience. This is what that training brought to me. And I think that's what it's meant to. Yeah, we need to learn how to do stuff. We need to learn how to do our rituals. We need to learn how to stand in line. We need to know how to chant. But we also need to know how to touch each other gently. We need to know to remember, that we are all human beings and that we are all here. I'm going to kind of close this with my Voltaire quote, if I can remember what it is, because I never remember it. We always talk about Indra's net with the jewels reflecting each other. Don't remember where it is. I'm gonna have to remember it off the top of my head when I don't even have half that brain here. A mirror is a worthless invention. The only way to truly see yourself is in the reflection of someone else's eyes. And that's not simply literal. The reflection of someone else's eyes is where you find yourself. It's where you respond. You see your own response to that glitter. You see that your own response to the rest of the net that you're connected to. And, Michael Jackson's Man in the Mirror. I'm like, okay, no, Bubba. Not that it's not a terrible song. Very nice, and I know what he's talking about. But there's not just one, that's not that self in that reflection. It reflects us all and how we treat each other. And that's what monastic training is about. And that is how that it's not to train us how to be priests. It's training us how to live this Dharma. And that's what we are all doing in some shape or form out here as we come to places like this to sit together, to listen to each other breathe, hear each other cough, run into each other on the stairs, step on a foot or two, drop the tea, whatever. It's all training. Take it seriously. Enjoy it. And, for all the hurt that comes up, just keep trying to remember, you know. Um, and I'm not saying drop the word practice, but understand, you know, when you throw the ball in practice, you're still throwing the ball, right? When you practice generosity, that is still your generous heart opening. Let it, whether it falls flat or not. So I'm going to stop because, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Here she goes again. And we can discuss or, have questions, or if you have questions about that. And one last thing. I'm talking about women's practice here, but I don't want to talk about women's practice because it's not just women's practice. I think it became with the Nisoto because, like I said, they got nothing to lose. No status, no nothing to lose. Not like the men's temples. Is that us? You got nothing to lose. So live that way, right? So I'm shutting up now. Okay, sorry. Sorry, you. Sorry, me. Okay, so if you have a question, please feel free, or if you have a comment or um,
Um,
an answer
Reverend
for me.
Atkinson.
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Okay.
okay, great. Reverend Atkinson, thank you so much for sharing your experience in Japan. We do have a question from one of our online participants. And can you all hear me okay? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, great, great. Okay. Could you elaborate on what you said about women having a deeper lack of expectations to be in leadership roles, being advantageous to their own understanding and or experience of Dharma? And if that circumstance makes them a more qualified teacher, what can we do as Sangha members to encourage their placement in Sangha leadership roles?
I'm not going to say it makes them better teachers, but it does make them teachers. What I meant is, traditionally, particularly in a traditional culture like Japan, which I'm not going to sit here and talk about like I know something, but from my understanding is that women's temples and women's practice are usually not as well supported, or traditionally have not been well supported. And so there's not a lot of places for them to go. In a sense, the young men that go to a Heiji, no, not trying to, no shade, but the young men that go to a Heiji are going with a kind of almost career in mind to take over the temple from their father, or to be assigned to a temple somewhere, if that's possible, or to be a scholar or something like that. And as we know, as it has been in all, most cultures in this world, women have not been afforded the same sort of opportunities. Like I said, some of the women that were there, with the exception of Ayama Roshi, she's older too. she's she's in her 90s now. But some of these women have been working and practicing with her for most of their lives. Um, some of the women there were, as I said, a little bit older than me, and some a little bit younger. But there was no career for them to be had out of this. If there's no, you know, in our Western minds, it's kind of like, you know, oh, I go into this and I'm going to be this and whatever, you know, and you know, I no shade. This is how we kind of think. I've been in angos and places where, well, I'm going to be a teacher, you know. Okay, good. What that mean? Um, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to start my own Zen center and all that kind of. I never heard that kind of talk in the Nisoto because it just wasn't there. It wasn't available for her. And I'm not saying those things are bad. Yeah, go be a teacher. Yes. Yes, go open a Zen center. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. But that's not the reason you're doing that. You're not doing it to be a teacher. Not really. If you look deep in your heart and you're really serious about this, you're not doing that for that. You're doing this because the Dharma is your life. And this is how it's being expressed in your life. And however it is, that's wonderful. But for these women, they didn't in the past have this sort of opportunity or expectation. So there's no goal at all to being there, except to live the Dharma. A lot of those women had been there. Some, Ayama Roshi had her own temple, and there were 2 other women that had their own temples. But there were other women, they just lived there. That was their whole lives. I never, because ignorant me couldn't speak Japanese, I couldn't talk to them and find out, what does this mean for you? You know, so I'm not going to put words in their mouths. But it was an example for me. It's like, I'm doing this for, or I'm doing this. Do you know what I mean? So I can't speak for them, but that's kind of what it came in the meaning for me. And as I said, I kept talking about practice, practice, practice. And then Professor Ride lived, you know, and I realized, as far as I am away from it, that that's what I want. That's my aspiration, is to live as Dharma, not for something. And that's so contrary to what we do in our, you know, in this world. That's the opposite message from what's coming out in the newspaper. No, there's no newspaper. How are you? That's coming out on the internet, you know. You know, that's not what they tell me to do on the internet. I got to have a goal and I got to make some money and I got to do this and I got to show people that I am worthy. And no, that's how we have to work in this world, and that's fine. And yeah, you can have goals and things like that, but underneath it, there's the Dharma. That is no goal. That remembers those tender people in your own tender body, you know, that's being abused, that sometimes I abuse in the effort to, I guess, survive towards some goal. I don't know. I have to think about that. I have to keep thinking about that. And so it's kind of, that's what I mean, you know. Like I said, I'm not going to put words in their mouths, but that's what I saw, and that's what I came away with. So I hope that answers something that question. But, you know, thank you.
You could just wait for 1 moment to speak into the
Oh, wow. Can you speak a little bit more about the transition from living in monastic life and returning to the world of expectation, where there is reward for ascension, where there is, I think, a necessity for a certain level of ego? Sometimes it feels that way, or to attend to the paperwork of consequence. How does that operate now for you?
For me, you said transition back to. One of the things that made me think that I hadn't stayed in the Soto or anywhere of practice long enough is that was almost immediate. You step back into your house and there's a bill on the desk and oh shoot. Yeah. It's immediate because that's the way brains work. You know, this is the you know the struggle, the effort that we're making. I want to call it struggle. The effort that has to be made to always, you know, yeah, you pay your bill, but can you remember, you know, what's important here? Can you remember the Dharma? Can you remember that, you know, yeah, bills, but also magnanimity that I can't say. Why did I try that? You know, parental mind, generosity, consciousness, generosity and compassion and all of those things when you pick that up. And just, you know, it's difficult. It's difficult. So like I said, the transition for me and coming out of the Nisoto, you know, you see I'm still transitioning. I still consider myself learning from that and from the other experiences that I've had that are just as forming, you know. It's the nature of our suffering. You know, that's it. That's our suffering. To forget, to put that ego in its place, which is nowhere, and still approach life and the beings that we're with full, open, wholehearted. There's no word for that. It's silly. I could say love, but it's just like I don't want to load it with, you know, that. But, you know, to live the Dharma, to really live it, not just speak it, not just read it, not just study it, not just practice pretend it. It's right here. It's all I have to do, and yet it is so. There's so much effort to get beyond this ego and this sense of I. So maybe I answered your question or answered something. But thank you.
Yeah.
Sure.
Excuse me. I was wondering if at any point or any experience that you had while you were there that you felt, oh, okay, it's broken. Like it's
The
really broken.
broom. Yeah, the broom. I'll tell you, I almost don't want to get into the story. Stop me, please, if it gets too long. The broom. When I first got there, I was given I was part of the Tenzo Ryo. And remember that place that I told you where they bring the food and all that? One of my jobs was to sweep and take care of that area. There's a little altar that hangs from the wall up there that you have to clean and take care of, and clean the altar and change the flowers and all that. And then after you do that, you're supposed to sweep and mop the floor underneath all the way out the door and down the stairs into the yard. And they told me how to do that. They gave me the broom and they gave me the cloth, and it was just a wet cloth, and I was supposed to do that. Somewhere in those days, in those early days, a person came to me and said, "Why are you doing that?" And then what she meant was, "Why are you on the floor on your knees wiping that? Go get a mop." And she told me where the mop was, and she said, "But don't tell anybody, what did she say exactly? She said, "But no, make sure you put it back, and so nobody sees you take it, because somebody will say something." And I'm like, okay. Am I supposed to do this or not? But then she said, but the way she said it, because I didn't have enough confidence in myself. And I'm like, why am I doing this? Am I being hazed? Yeah, well, there's a mop over here. Why didn't you just tell me to go to the mop? So I went and I did what she said for a couple of days, and I mopped it, whatever. And you have to go, you get the mop, and it's dirty and it's stinking, and you got to get a pail and all of that, right? Okay, it tells you I'm not thinking. A couple of days later, the American girl who was coming and going came, and she said, "You're not supposed to do that. That's our mop. You can't use that here." Okay? She's the only person in the place that speaks English that I'm confident is going to understand me. Okay? So I just start to argue with her. Because America, I have a right to use this mop. She said I could use this mop. And I got all kinds of explanations. Okay. Now, she said, but you can't use this mop. She wasn't being nasty or anything. She said, but you can't use this mop. This belongs to this, and this is what we clean this with, blah, blah, blah. And she took the mop out of my hand and walked away. So I'm sitting there being all mad, right? Okay, knowing I got in England and I'm not really supposed to be doing it, right? But some ego part of me said I wasn't supposed to be on the floor, that this other person thought I was stupid because I was doing it this way, all of the stuff, right? I'm 49 years old, okay? So there were a little bit of tears and anger and blah, blah, blah. And I realized, that she's the only person that I had spoken to in English fully like that for like weeks. It was only a few weeks I'd been there. And the only reason, if one of the Japanese women had come to me and said, "You can't use that mop," and took it from me, I couldn't have said anything. I couldn't have made her understand. What was to understand is mop. But there would have been no opportunity for me to assert that ego that was hurt because I got caught, or because I got tricked, or whatever it was that was going in my mind that I thought was happening. And so after that, I went inside and I got the rag that they gave me in the first place, wet it, and I was done. The whole thing of using that mop, you have to go get the bucket, fill the bucket, ring, all that takes forever. I went and got the rag and did what they told me I was supposed to do in the first place. I did it in 5 minutes. Yeah, shut up and just do it. And get all this stuff out of your head about what you and why you, it didn't matter. All you had to do was clean the floor. little ego crumble. Anyway, burnt, a real good burn, you know, a real good burn. And things like that keep happening to me. They kept happening to me at Minnesota. They keep happening to me now. You know, watch those things. Watch when your feelings are hurt for no good reason. A mop and a broom. Come on, think about that. And that's a simple thing. And there are some not so simple things in our lives that are like that we allow to blow up into mountains. When if you just stop for a second and let go of it, let go of your idea of what you think you are, what you think you're supposed to be doing, what you have a right to do, and all of that. Just let it go and give them the broom and let them walk away with it. Give them the pail and the mop and let them go. And that's what busting the ego is about. It's not about hurting your feelings. It's about you seeing what those feelings really are. Your little mask that is not really you. Because if I thought about it for 5 minutes, when she said, "What are you doing?" You know, she didn't call me stupid, but I heard that. You know, what are you doing? Think for 5 minutes. I'm wiping the floor, and that's all you got to do. Most of the trouble that comes to me in my life, I just made it up. And I'm dragging it along, cutting cutting a little bit, you know, every once in a while something falls away. And trying my best not to pick something else up. And so that's what I think, you know, that's an example. Not the only one, but that's not the only way. But yeah. Thank you. Is that a long story? Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I do this every time. So thank you all very much. If there's, other questions, thank you very much for listening and giving me the opportunity to talk today. And, maybe if you ask me a question about Nisoto or Ango or whatever, I might answer you. But last time, maybe, for a while anyway. It's time to move on. So remind me where we are.
The true merit of Buddha's way. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Illusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. The gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. Buddha's way is unsurpassable. I